Hi, hello, it's Unkempt Snugglepepper back with another episode of Art Critiques from Reddit. If you find this video helpful, down below in the doobly-doo you will find a link to buy me a coffee, as well as a link to submit your art to be featured on here. I don't know if this video will be public. I'm going to share it private first, and if they're okay, great. If you are not the artist, then congratulations, it's public. So this person says, I wanted to draw this. It was an idea I had. I wanted to draw kind of a Medusa figure with a bunch of snakes protecting her. And someday I want to be a tattoo artist. I think that's kick-ass. Like, I think it would be I want to say it would be fun to be a tattoo artist, but at the same time, I know there are a lot of assholes out there, figuratively and literally. Like, you can get that tattooed. I don't know why, but you can. My first topic that I want to talk about is style. Style should be a choice and not a crutch. And what I mean by that is sometimes when we receive criticism, like her eyes are big, the response is going to be, well, that's my style. And I don't want to say your style is wrong or inaccurate or you shouldn't draw in your style. However, in this piece specifically, the way the snakes are drawn, with attention to how snakes' eyes are shaped and how snake heads are shaped, compared to her, they appear a little too disjointed. I would redraw her face and draw the eyes a little bit smaller and a little bit more cat eye. We're going to get more of that sexy appeal. I don't know if that's what you're going for. We would get more of the sexy appeal and less of a childlike innocence. I always imagine Medusa to be like the opposite. So that is my stylistic point. I personally would advise not to worry too much about style. What is your style? What isn't your style? Because how we make marks as artists, we're all going to be different and we're all going to have that style, even if we're trying to portray realism. The individual marks we make and the individual choices we make to creatively problem solve sets us apart from everyone else before we even develop what we consider our style. And then, once our style is our style, it's going to evolve over time. I highly recommend looking at any webcomic. You're going to see that the characters change over the course of the webcomic. And it's easier to see when you start with episode 1 and then jump to episode 100. So don't worry too much about style. I would talk on the subject of tattoo styles, like, do you go traditional or neo-traditional? Do you do black and white? Do you tattoo in color? But I don't know enough about tattoo and tattoo art in general to really advise on that. I would say instead focus on the fundamentals. That way, as a tattoo artist, especially as a young tattoo artist, you will be able to draw everything and anything because you're going to be asked to draw everything and anything. Style is something that's developed over time and usually later in a career. So the second set of topics that I want to talk about is going to be concerning the anatomy and the shading. With her, I'm going to assume that her shoulders are supposed to be square. I lean horribly when I draw, and she is leaning very much this way. And the way that I see that is by either taking a picture and then everything suddenly becomes obvious, or if you have any photo editing stuff on your phone, usually you can flip the canvas and see it from the other direction. And suddenly all those mistakes that you were missing before become more apparent. Another option is holding your art up to a mirror. So I'm going to assume her shoulders are supposed to be straight. And that here is her chest going down into the hips. I have a bit of a problem because it looks like from where her legs are angled that we are looking from top down onto her, but the rest of her body doesn't say that. So if she's sitting on her shins, then her knees are actually going to be up here because the leg is foreshortened. We're not going to see as much. And then out to the side, that's when you would see her feet. Also keep in mind there is a fair amount of fleshy fat right here, and you're going to see a lot of that fold. The line is going to be just slightly different. It's also going to have her thighs. When we sit, you'll notice that our thighs look fatter than they are because all the fleshy stuff is being pushed out to the sides. What to do with her arms? So I decided two variations on this. One is that you're going for kind of a sexy, seductive look, and the other is her hands are tied behind her back and she's somehow captured and these snakes are going to protect her. So if you were going for sexy, don't you dare come at me, I would put like a hand up here with her snake, right? So we have one hand here saying, hey, look at my snake, he's so cool. Oh, her thumb would be on the outside. Check out my snake, he's so cool, he's such a good little snake. Right, so I would put the hands interacting with the snakes. Maybe one right here on top of his head. Right, so that's where I would put the arms if you're going for more of a sexy pose. If her hands are tied behind her back, a few things happen. We still have the shoulder. She still has the shoulder. We would see them like this. Now, personally, you have a lot of space right here that you could put the hands if you wanted to, and she's holding them up like, oh, poor me, my hands are tied, but watch out, I have all these cool little snakies. She wouldn't say snakies. She's more badass than me. I'm not very badass. A note on shading. So I see you get some darker colors going on, and you're beginning to start to understand shading. I think you might want to consider the light source a little bit more. Where is the light coming from? Is it coming from top down? At which case, and I would consider increasing some of the shading. The shading on the breast. The breast essentially is kind of elongated sphere. So she's going to have shadow underneath on the actual breast to show it's three-dimensional, as well as on her torso. So I would add shading there, and then more shading to bring her arms behind her back. Generally, when your arms are behind your back, they stick out more than this. That would be a very difficult pose to recreate. Also, all of this is going to be in shadow. There's going to be shadow here. Not too much because, again, there's a lot of flesh there. So I'm going under the assumption that, again, the shadow is top down. Don't forget the face is also going to receive a bit of shadow and all of the hair behind her. You were right, there was shadow on her nose. These lines suggest that she's worried, but the overall shape of her eyes do not. Her eyebrows suggest she might be a little bit angry because they have that arc to them. I would move that arc just a little bit back to give more seductive and less angry. And then with the snakes, there's going to be a bit more shading. Let's see. So this guy, we want to bring him a little bit more to the back. This guy would have more shading. in through here, under his jaw. This guy would have more shading. As he's coming forward, he's going to get a lot of shadow. These guys get difficult. So he would receive shadow here, and then Red Snake would receive shadow here, as well as on their necks. With her mouth, if you're going for more seductive, rather than kind of having that wider smile, I would do more of a pout. Let's move in. Yeah, I would bring this up. I think you wanted to add that little bit of kind of an up. A little bit of a smile. With the anatomy, because it is in a different style, her head is quite large for the size of her body. I would, again, this is a stylistic choice, but overall for the composition, oh, well, let's get on the right layer. Overall for the composition, I think her head could be smaller. And then I would bring down the size of the eyes. They're still big. They're still anime eyes. But they're a little bit more in proportion with the rest of her. Otherwise, she looks like she's all eyes. I hope this helps. Because I haven't seen like a full body of your artwork, I don't know where you are on understanding anatomy. This is very specific to this piece. I also think that art is a skill and is something that is learned over time in addition to practice. So every time you watch a video that talks about a new technique, in order for that technique to stick, you have to practice that technique. I think you have some talent, which is kind of the predisposition to being able to see things and recreate them, which is great. The next step for you is going to be obtaining those skills, as learning as much as possible. I highly recommend checking out Marco Bucci as well as Proco. They both have great educational channels talking about what are the fundamentals of art and how do they apply to various things. If you found this video helpful, down in the doobly-doo is a buy me a coffee, as well as a link to submit your own art. Have a good day, stay out of trouble, and watch out for ladies with snake hair.